We'll talk about it. Loblaws, Sobeys, and Walmart are overcharging for underweighted meat. So you're buying a pound of meat, but you're actually getting less than a pound of meat. Very interesting happening there. BC election interference. Rustad is having a presser today to talk about that. So that will be very interesting. Find out if he's going to fight this whole it looked rigged election, and he accepted it and conceded, and then now is holding a presser. So I'll let you know what happens. Leblanc bows out of the Liberal leadership race. USA economic takeover of Canada. I'm going to put a finer point on what I was saying yesterday. What I was saying yesterday is basically I think we're snookered, and I'm going to say it again, just shorter this time. Canada imposing counter-tariffs on the United States. Right, on orange juice. The whole thing is just going to not work out for us. I don't think that we have a lot of leverage. And walk in and show us the balance sheet. I think Trump. There's a lot to get to. Let's get to it first. We have to start with the USA and Trump and what's going on. And fundamentally, I think, and I'm going to show you footage that I showed you yesterday in just a minute, but there's a lot more other stuff to go along with it as well. But I think that we are in an economic situation that is so weak that without the United States, we can't survive. As a country, Canada, if Donald Trump said, we're going to be so protectionist, we're not buying your cars, we're not buying anything, no North American free trade at all, we're just closing up shop, that's that. Game over. It's a brand new day and we're not doing any of it. Canada would have a very hard time economically. And that fact alone gives him a lot of leverage. And somebody was saying, just before I started the show, so I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing, $36 trillion doesn't give a lot of leverage. Sure, they've got a debt of $36 trillion. But I think that fundamentally, Trump is going to put the finances of the United States House in order, and he wants to expand. And why not, right? Why not swing for the fences, right? Honestly, so he's going to put that into motion. And this is an attack not on Canada. A lot of people are seeing this as an attack on Canada, and our government is framing it as an attack on Canada. But I think that more not an attack on the citizens of Canada. The entity that is Canada has been taken over by Chinese interests, Indian diaspora interests, Khalistani interests, Sikh interests too. And so there's a lot of competing groups that have control of our country. Our elections seem to be rigged, and there's no accountability for the citizen. And so I think that what Trump's doing is not attacking the Canadian citizen. He doesn't want economic ruin for the Canadian citizen. He wants for Canada to join the United States and just normalize this situation that we're already living in. We're living in a situation where the United States subsidizes Canada to the tune of a lot of money, $200 billion, and without it, we can't survive, and they don't want to do it anymore. And so in order to normalize that situation, Trump wants us to become part of the U.S. And I don't think we have the economic ability to withstand that if Trump actions it. I think he holds enough cards to say, I'm going to do this, whether you like it or not. I think it's more like a hostile takeover. Like he walks in and he says, well, here, my first tab, second tab, this is 22 seconds. And he says they should be a state. If what he says here is true, if Canada can't stand on its own without U.S. subsidies, then he holds all the cards and he can do whatever he wants, no matter what we say. Does that make sense? That's my belief. So here's Donald Trump talking about how the United States is already operating in a situation where Canada is subsidized like a state. We might as well make it formal. And I'm paraphrasing, but here's what he says. Listen.
But why are we supporting a country 200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down, I said, what would happen if we didn't do it? He said Canada would dissolve. Canada wouldn't be able to function. But why?
If that's true, then he holds all the cards. And if it's not true, then we should stand on our own and tell him to pound sand. And then we can show him that he doesn't hold that leverage over us and he can't do it, because he's not saying he's going to militarily take over Canada. He's saying he's going to economically take over Canada. Actually, it's already done, and he can openly talk about it because nothing anybody can do can change it, because we're 6 moves away. We're economically so far behind the 8 ball that there's nothing we can do about what Trump is saying. He's walked in, showed us the balance sheet, and said, see that $200 million, billion dollar hole in your balance sheet right there that I'm going to create right there? See that? You see that? You're going to become a state, or I'm going to blow that hole in your balance sheet. If that's not all true, then he holds no cards. But if that's true, Then he walks in and says, see that? I'm going to do that unless you do this. If Canada says, okay, go ahead, do it. We don't have a backup. We don't have anything else, nowhere else to sell the cars, nowhere else to sell our products to. Where are we going to sell the cars to? Europe, right? Like that might work for like a half a second, but it's not going to work long term. Probably. I mean, I've been wrong in the past, so maybe we can pivot and sell a whole bunch of stuff to Europe. But I think that Trump holds the cards. He knows he holds the cards. And Canada, the mechanism they were going to use to force this into the New World Order is being utilized by Donald Trump to force this economic move. That's what I think. I think that the globalists were going to use it to force Canada to drop us deeper into that globalist framework. And instead, Trump's going to cut the globalists out completely and make the United States stronger than it's ever been with Panama, Greenland, and the United Canada, right? And I don't think we're going to have the ability to say no. Like he says, you say no, see that $200 billion, say bye-bye to that. And no problem. You guys can suffer for a little while. And when you're ready, I'll think about it. Right? Like it's one of those things. Here's TR6 governor, and he says, here's a thread. Have you wondered why recent events are happening here? Why is Trump trolling Canada? It's all by design. All 338 of them are involved. It's all real. June 30th, 2025, it starts. Maybe, I don't know. This was a year ago. Darshan Maharaja asked Pierre Poilievre, what about Section 21 of the Banking Act? And TR Governor says, tell me how Poilievre, who was the finance critic of the opposition, does not know about the Sunset Clause, Section 21 of the Bank Act. He says he hasn't read it. Remember when he says he hasn't read about the US or the UN SDGs. Here's this interaction. There, he's being asked about the act I'm going to show you in just a minute. Here we go.
Darshan Maharaja. I'm a blogger and podcaster. My question is about the Bank Act. Section 21, in fact, it's titled Sunset Provision, and it says, subject to subsections 2 and 4, banks shall not carry on business, and authorized foreign banks shall not carry on business in Canada after June 30, 2025. Now, subsections 2 and 4 allow for discretionary...
Now, the live one was updated on 2025-0106. So it was updated on the 6th of January, 2025 to move to June 30th, 2026. Okay? I don't know how these things are amended, but it's the Banking Act. And what he said is exactly correct. And then it can be extended. And he talks about this. And Poilievre says he hasn't read it.
Extension of the deadline by 6 months each. But I'm trying to make sense of this. I saw this yesterday, and is this a Damoclean sword hanging over Canada?
I don't know. I haven't read that section of the Bank Act. I have to have a look. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not.
How about you?
No, I haven't heard that.
You haven't heard that?
No.
Okay.
I think you should look into it and put out a public statement. I hope that the meaning that I'm getting out of this is completely wrong, but it needs to be clarified.
Okay, I will.
This is a year ago. I don't think it's been clarified, but this just got extended, so that's good. The order is not a regulation for the purposes of the Statutory Instrument Act. However, it shall be published in Part 2 of the Canada Gazette, so it's been gazetted. An exception, dissolution. If Parliament dissolves on the day set out in the subsection 1 or on any day within the 6 months period before the day or on any day within an extension ordered under subsection 2, banks may continue to carry on business and authorized foreign banks may continue to carry on business in Canada until the end of 180th day after the first day of the first session of the next Parliament. It's possible that this is just a custodial, like we need to reauthorize the banks to lend money or something. I have honestly, genuinely no idea. But it seems like this thing gets extended every year. But why would they have a sunset provision that disables banks to carry on? Like it says subject to subsections 2 and 4, and this is 2 and 4. This is sunset provision 2 and sunset provision 4. And they're both listed on the first page, so I've already read them. Subject to those 2 and 4 subsections, banks shall not carry on business and authorized foreign banks shall not carry on business in Canada after June 30th, 2026. So I don't know what that means. And apparently neither does Pierre Poilievre. And last year he was supposed to read up on it and he didn't. Or he did, and he just didn't bother getting back to anybody. So TR Governor continues. He says, this was a year ago. Tell me how Pierre, who is the finance critic, doesn't know, and he hasn't read it. Here's the Sunset Clause, Section 21 of the Bank Act, and you can link to it yourself if you're interested. Links in the description. Trudeau has borrowed massively from world banks to give out in foreign aid, no funds going into Canadian infrastructure, hospitals, etc., raises taxes, crippling small businesses, discouraging growth, shut down industry or sell them off, stymie oil and gas productions and LNG, force massive immigration, giving the newcomers a free ride with free housing and a living wage to drain the economy, disregarding seniors, veterans' needs when the housing bubble bursts, bail out the banks, all to land us right in the hands of the global banks, or the world banks, creating sovereign debt. All of this debt causes our dollar to be devalued, which is happening now. In the near future, we will not be able to pay the interest on our debt. The piper always needs to be paid. This is where Trump makes his move. He pays our debt, and we become the 51st state. Meanwhile, in Canada, Freeland resigns just before budget by design as June 30th quietly looms. Trudeau resigns, prorogues to March 24th. LPC anoints Carney. House of Commons resumes. Singh reneges on vote of non-confidence, saying Trudeau resigned. No spring election. June 30th looms. But now June 30th has been extended to June 30th, 2026. So maybe it's a custodial thing again. Trump has said he would use economic pressure upon us. He'd said Pierre may not win. That's because after June 30th, 25, the banks cease to operate. There will be no fall election. Not true, but I still think that there's economic pressure that's happening aside from all of this. This is just an interesting, I don't know what this is, and I don't know. There's probably some kind of explanation that seems reasonable, but the economic quagmire we're in, I don't think you can get out of. If Trump says, I don't want your cars, and yesterday I said he could put 100% tariff on the cars, but all he would have to say is, we don't want your cars in the United States. We're not going to take them anymore from Ontario. Stop building them because we're not going to take them. And that's it. You're done. Unless you become the 51st state, in which case we'll happily have your cars, right, fellow Americans. Then he kind of wins. But are there checks and balances to prevent him from doing that? Maybe. But I don't know. And here's Mark Miller, and he's talking like Trump doesn't have anything at all. He's saying he sounds very confident that Trump is out to lunch and he can't do any of this. He can't even find Canada on a map, which I think Trump is happy to let his opponents underestimate him. And if Mark Miller believes what he's saying here, I think he's underestimating Trump. Anyway, regardless, here's Mark Miller.
There's a chance in hell it's going to happen. They'd have to find us on a map, but it'll take them maybe a few years. Look, I said a couple weeks ago, this is like an episode of South Park. I'll start to get worried when they confirm Eric Cartman as the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Like, this is, it's silly. It's unbecoming, frankly, of a president, any president that would say that. But we do have to take it seriously, and I think there's a chance in hell it's going to happen. They'd have to find us on a map, but it'll take them maybe a few years.
Is this what we want from our elected officials? Speaking of unbecoming, it doesn't seem like he's assessing the situation and taking it seriously with the weight it deserves, right? Here's George, and he says, reporters asked President Trump if he's serious about using the U.S. military to take Greenland and the Panama Canal, and he doubled down. We got applause from people of Greenland as we landed yesterday. It was like a love fest on the Panama Canal. There were notes, community notes about Donald Trump Jr. landing and saying, this is not about buying Greenland. This is about a podcast episode. Don't worry. And it's like, why not both? Can it be both? It can't be both. Here's Trump talking about this with the press. And again, he's very, very confident about his position. And I have no reason to think that he's not being serious about all of this. I don't think he's joking. And I don't think there's some kind of clause that prevents Trump from walking in and pointing out the $200 billion potential hole and him saying, I'll action it if you don't do what I want. And I think that we're so screwed that we wouldn't be able to do anything. There's no response that we'd have that would move him. But I could be wrong. Here's Trump talking about this confidently.
Significant pushback from people of Greenland and Panama comments. Would you consider sending U.S. troops in order to fly with those two?
Yeah, I don't think we had pushback. Greenland is, if you look at the people there, we got tremendous. We got applause as we landed yesterday. I had my representatives, my son Don, and representatives go there, and it was like a love fest. You know that The Panama Canal, look, they're taking advantage of us. They charge more for our ships than do any other ships. They charge more for our Navy to go through. We built it. We gave it to them for $1. In other words, we gave it to them for nothing. The most expensive structure ever built in the history of our country, relatively speaking. The most expensive, by far. We lost 38,000 people. They gave it to them for $1, and then they charge more for our ships. It's not going to happen. And China's running the Panama Canal. That's not going to happen either.
He's consistent, right? When he gets when there's a line that he's talking about, and he seems genuine as well. He seems it's off the cuff. He says, these are the problems I'm trying to solve. That's it. So it's consistent. I don't think the same consistency can be said of most Western leaders these days. Talk out of both sides of their mouth. CTV News is reporting Canada could impose tariffs on U.S. steel, orange juice in response to Trump's threat. So, if you like orange juice, stock up on orange juice. Canadian officials are narrowing a list of American products to target in the event the federal government must respond to U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods, CTV News has confirmed. As first reported by CBC News, there's a document circulating among senior Canadian government officials which lists American-made goods which could be slapped with retaliatory levies, which is the same thing. The sources say U.S. steel products and ceramics. You mean the Chinese steel that we pretend we make here? And ceramics, including toilets and sinks, as well as Florida orange juice, are on the list of targeted items. One senior government source tells CTV News that the list represents a small number of items that could be on a final list of products subject to counter-tariffs. Isn't orange juice, like, do we have some kind of orange juice refinery? Did they send us raw oranges and we magically turn it into juice or something like that and we're sending it back? Or are we saying, listen, if you send oranges our way, we're gonna tax your farms and things like that? Because if so, they'll just say, listen, we're going to stop sending you oranges, you idiots. I fear, right? Like, what's the configuration of this? One senior government source tells CTV News that the list represents a small number of items that could be on a final list of products subject to counter tariffs. No decisions have been taken on whether to retaliate or what would be on the final list, sources says. The ask was, can you please close our borders because criminals keep crossing in across the northern border that happen to be on terrorist watch lists, and will you please stop drugs from flooding into the country? And instead of doing something about that, we're looking at counter tariffs because we don't want to stop the drugs flooding into the United States. What kind of idiots do we have running the place? Never mind. I understand. We do have idiots. More ideological communists running the place than idiots, I think. They're not stupid. They know what they're doing, and they're being very effective at rolling out their plan. Stephen Harper is responding to this whole thing, and he's got a video to go along with it. It's a 30-second spot on Canada and how Canada is so super great. He says, true when I said it and true today, Canada is and always has been our country, and we want Canada to be true north that is as strong and free as it can be in every way that matters. I realized as I was saying the first sentence that this is a quote of the video, so I'll let Stephen Harper say his quote. Here we go.
It is and always has been our country. And we want Canada to be a true north that is as strong and as free as it can be in every way that matters. The best country in the world. That's why we're here. That's why we strive. That's why we serve. Canada must reflect the true character of the Canadian people. Honorable in our dealings, faithful to our commitments, loyal to our friends. By turns, a courageous warrior and a compassionate neighbor. It is our purpose that Canada must be great. It must be great for all Canadians. It must be a country of hope and an example to the world. And only when it is these things, when Canada is all that it can be, only then can we say that our work is done.
So that was a campaign ad for the Conservatives. And so is that enough to save Canada, right? Is that what Canada means today? Is that what Canada is today? Do you think? Here's Maxime Bernier. He's responding as well. It's a little long. I'll read the first couple of paragraphs, but it's a little long. Maybe I'll read all of it. I don't know. He says, one thing I've always despised about the USA is the militaristic and imperialistic attitude of their neoconservative establishment, present in both Democrat or Republican parties. For decades, they've invaded, engineered coups, bombed, and killed thousands of innocents in countries that pose no threat to them. Under the pretext of protecting the free world, they still have 750 military bases in 80 countries to control their empire. One of the key reasons I supported the election of Donald Trump was that he had been opposed to these pointless and costly foreign wars and has promised to quickly end the U.S. proxy war in Russia and Ukraine. While the Democrats under Obama and Biden have clearly become the war party, the Republicans under Trump, to their credit, have behaved like the peace party. It's clearly in the U.S.'s interest to do so, since they have ultimately been humiliated in most of their foreign interventions from Vietnam to Afghanistan. Things are going badly in Ukraine. Sanctions against Russia have backfired. The BRICS now compromise half the world's population and a huge chunk of its resources and economy, and a new multipolar set of international relations is gradually replacing the one based on American hegemony. It's also in the Americans' interest to adapt to this new geopolitical situation and help it evolve peacefully rather than deluding themselves that they will always be the top dog. Their government is close to bankruptcy, with a national debt that is spiraling out of control, the status of the dollar as the world's reserve currency, which allowed them to print trillions of dollars, export their... Why can we print so much money then? Export their inflation and make the rest of the world pay for their empire is now threatened as emerging countries are rapidly de-dollarizing. All this is to say that it's extremely disappointing and concerning to now see Mr. Trump acting like a typical arrogant American imperialist with his increasingly aggressive and outrageous statements about annexing Canada and Greenland and the Panama Canal under the pretext of protecting the free world. For 2 centuries, we've been the closest friends, neighbors, trading partners, and allies. Does he really want to throw all of this overboard in a grandiose quest to make America's dick bigger? He says he wants to only use economic force rather than bombing our cities and killing us like his predecessors. What a nice touch. Concretely, that means he's willing to wage economic war on us, destroy our economy and our standard of living, and inevitably also hurt that of Americans, but to a much smaller extent, in order to achieve his goal. Obviously, Canada is in no position to win any war with the U.S., military or economic. We can retaliate and hurt the Americans, but we won't be able to sustain an economic war for long, given our economy's complete dependence on theirs. Plus, Ottawa is almost as bankrupt as Washington. Yep, that's the truth, right? Well, we point at their debt while completely ignoring our federal debt and provincial debt, right? Each province has its own debt, right? There's one taxpayer, that's me, one person, federal debt, provincial debt, all of that is combined, right? And then you add all the provinces' debt up too. And then you go, holy cow, how much of our GDP are we in debt? All of it. Anyway, I digress. I still hope, but we can't pretend like our debt don't stink, right? I still hope, as I said weeks ago, that these are just another example of his habit of making outrageous declarations as a bargaining position to force his counterparts to do something or make concessions under threat, and not the ravings of an unstable megalomaniac. I don't think so. He wants a better trade agreement, a more secure border. I think he wants Canada. He wants Canada. He will not be happy until he has Canada. He wants us to help pay our share of North America's defense. These are all fair demands that can and should be negotiated in both countries' interests. The negotiation should have happened years ago, and it did. And he said, if you don't pay your fair share, shit's going to happen. And now shit's happening. Okay, that's it, man. He told us, I said, and they all went, ha, 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 Donald Trump's so dumb. And he was like, okay, you guys wait and see. If he really is serious about annexing Canada, though, we're entering a whole different game and trying to deal with a dangerous bully, and there won't be any easy solution. My question is, could I then be president of the United States? I'm a natural-born American. If I'm new American, right? I'd run. That'd be super fun. Jeremy McKenzie says, hypothetical thread, since it's water cooler talk of the day, could Canada defend itself against an invasion from America? No, absolutely freaking not. Military. In a traditional, conventional military sense, there's absolutely no chance Canada could hope to retain an inch of ground anywhere on the continent. We have, at best, 3,000 to 4,000 combat troops in the entirety of Canadian forces, with about 5 times as many support trades. One single division from the United States Marine Corps could tackle and defeat the entire Canadian military and police by itself. Resisting by force of any of arms would be suicidal and a negligent slaughter of our own men. Yes, Jeremy's veteran, so I believe his assessment is correct. Economic. Another option for nations with underdeveloped or virtually non-existent armies is to leverage their wealth and resources. Ha! I know. Stop laughing. Unfortunately, as Canada has wasted more money through COVID than we spent on World War II, as a footnote, we are completely broke. There is a grand total of 0 tons of gold in the nation's reserves. Our resources are largely spoken for, and foreign interests, namely China, thanks Harper, have substantial influence in our domestic companies and resources. China did not make an appearance in Harper's video, by the way. Back to this. Social. In a timeline where 65% of Canadians were ferociously opposed to American occupation or annexation due to the geographical size and distribution of population in the country, it would be the best course of action to adopt a strategy similar to other nations that have defeated America when it attempted to occupy much smaller stretches of territory in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. A generational campaign of guerrilla warfare boosted by the difficulty in telling an American apart from a Canadian would provide a difficult challenge for the United States. It would be extremely expensive and difficult to be everywhere at once. Holding this much territory with any certainty would require an immense contribution of troops by the United States, one they don't currently possess, without withdrawing their forces for almost every global outpost and base they currently have. However, in this timeline, it appears the vast majority of Canadians are either in favor of or indifferent to the idea of an American takeover. Yeah, I was going to say, Trump's not going to do it militarily. He's going to make it so the public wants to do it. He's going to set the circumstances so the public says, please, 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 let's do this. Let's listen to Trump and move ourselves to become Americans. That's what he's wanting. He wants the public to enthusiastically embrace this. He doesn't want to send a military to do this. He wants to recruit from Canada, right? He wants to get the best of the best into the U.S. Army and so on and so forth. And he wants to strengthen North American security and blah, 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 if you believe the rhetoric, right? Most Canadians don't even know who they are and can't define their own people. So swapping one flag patch for another doesn't seem like much of a change or a sacrifice. That's been done on purpose by decades of liberal policies and all sorts of other marketing pushes to get people to see nationalism as bad. Anyway, back to this. We've seen the character of the average Canadian man in the past 5 years. He is selfish, afraid, anxious, and eager to hit the easy button for temporary relief while ignoring the long-term consequences. Again, that's by design. He stood by and did nothing as the petty tin pot tyrants in Ottawa trampled rights, jailed citizens, froze bank accounts, tortured children and the elderly while implementing a state murder program that has claimed the lives of 65 to 70,000 since its inception in 2016. For comparison, 62,000 Canadian troops died in all of World War II. So we're being murdered and nobody's doing anything. And again, it's one of those things where we have been sold all of this as if it's good, right? And again, if people believe there's a plan, even if it's a horrific plan, they don't see the problem with it. The level of active resistance faced by the United States and Canada would be minimal to non-existent at all. In short, if Canadians wanted to stay Canadian so badly they would risk their lives for it, it could theoretically be achieved with enough luck and timely decision-making. The sad reality is that too many wouldn't risk getting wet or missing their daily coffee to help themselves. Miscellaneous. Another factor to consider is the rapidly declining stability of Canada, be it from out-of-control crime the police are incapable of stopping, that our parliament is entirely captured by foreign interests. Did we forget about this already? Canada has become a safe haven for criminals, money laundering, and terrorists. How long will America tolerate this? Worse, the renewed threat of major confrontation with Russia and China puts the burden on American leadership to be proactive in defending the continent. We aren't capable and having long abandoned our responsibility in carrying our share of the load and defending North America beyond a token political force. Trudeau's latest visit to Mar-a-Lago resulted in the Canadian Arctic being rebranded the North American Arctic. I don't think it will happen tomorrow, next month, or even soon, but inevitably, unless something significant changes, in spite of the Canadian people that results in drastic assertive affirmation of our existence, the larger, stronger, richer, dominant United States will inevitably absorb Canada as its territory. Yes, we live that way now already. We have already been absorbed economically by the United States. We live like a state now. If they took the money that is invested in Canada and stopped sending it, Canada would have an economic depression, wouldn't even come to begin to describe it. It would just be a disaster. And Trump knows it, and he's trying to avoid it. And he's saying, listen, we can't do this forever. It doesn't make sense. We're economically entangled anyway. Let's just make it official. Let's just sign that paperwork, baby. You're wearing the ring. You've been living with me for years, right? We've got 4 kids. Contrarian says, meet Justin Trudeau, the tone-deaf Prime Minister of Canada. Iran just posted their support for Trudeau today against his fight with Trump. Meanwhile, Trudeau just now says You can't make this up, folks. So this is Trudeau's tweet. So Iran posts... Sorry, I didn't realize it was loud. Iran says, just as we have always stood ready to support other nations, Iran is prepared to assist Canada, Mexico, Panama, and Greenland against U.S. aggression and terrorism. And Justin Trudeau posts this. 5 years ago, flight PS752 was unlawfully shot down by the Iranian regime. Today, we gathered to honor the 176 innocent lives taken, including all those on board who were coming home to Canada. We are determined to hold the Iranian regime accountable. So it seems like comms to me, right? And support the families, victims in their pursuit for justice. So, but it took them years to list the IRGC as a terrorist entity after that, right? And they only did it because Pierre Poilievre was forcing them in the House of Commons or something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, but basically, right? So it seems interesting timing to me. Rex Glacier says, to all the Liberals and their funded media wrapping themselves in the Canadian flag, did you forget calling our flag a trigger symbol and needing a trigger warning? Read the section in red. So, right, it's a little rich. Like, these people hate Canada. It's not like they want to protect that culture. Could you describe the Canadian culture that you're trying to protect there, Justin Trudeau? Because isn't that racist, right? Like, hold on a second. And more to the point, they say nationalism is bad and nationalism is somehow something to be avoided. And it's so bad that our flag is worthy of a trigger warning. So the Chronicle Herald on June 27th says, to our readers, inside today's edition on page A9, you'll find a Canadian flag to clip and post to help celebrate July 1st. We understand the flag doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. However, we hope our readers recognize their ability to play a role in shaping Canada's future is a freedom worth acknowledging. So trigger warnings, etc. And you should appreciate the Canadian flag. Okay. Here's Elizabeth May. This is one of those videos that is only a minute long, but as you're listening, it just seems a lot longer than a minute. And Elizabeth May is talking about annexing California, Oregon, and Washington. I wish I was kidding, but here we are. Here's Elizabeth May. She does not appear drunk in this presser. But maybe that's later on in the day. Here we go.
Hey, Donald, have we got a deal for you? You think we want to be the 51st state? Nah, but maybe California would like to be the 11th province. How about it? California, Oregon, Washington, you've got geography in common with us. And not only that, we've already got a carbon trading system between California and Quebec. We've got some strong alliances on our west coast from British Columbia. There's been a lot of academic papers.
There's like 30 seconds left, and I'm already sick of listening to her. Nobody in the United States is going to make a headline. Elizabeth May, click, click, click. Elizabeth May has made a bid for California and Washington and Oregon. Nobody thinks that Elizabeth May is going to maneuver a situation where those states might join Canada. Nobody, absolutely nobody. Why? She has no leverage. She has absolutely no leverage. She can't do it. It's not something that's in the wheelhouse. It's not something that she's even capable of, right? So nobody's going to listen to this nonsense because it's nonsense. But when Trump says it, he's got the leverage. He knows what he can do. And that's why people are like, holy cow, Canada is part of the US? Do you think maybe really? And, some people say yes, some people say no. I think Trump's super duper serious. And if he could do it, he will do it. That's what I think. And I think that we're snookered. So on the day of Jimmy Carter's funeral, so that's today, according to the Senate of Canada. Today, the flag of the Peace Tower will be flown at half-mast from sunrise to sunset. The day of the funeral of the late James Earl Carter Jr., former president of the United States of America. So we're watching for those envelopes today. We'll see if there's any kind of communications that happen there. But it'll be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful